Hope everyone's doing good. Welcome back to part 2 of our beginner series. Today I'm going to be going through supports, resistances and trend lines. The objective of this video is to get you to a level where you can understand what's going on with these levels and how to actually apply them to your charts and use them to start making profit. So we're going to start going through just supports and resistances here. So first of all, I have a chart over here. You can see there's two lines. These two lines are acting as our resistance at the top and our support at the bottom. So the description that I've written over here, support sits below price while resistance sits above. So with support and resistance, the way you need to see it is almost as if it's acting as a floor and a ceiling for price. So we have our floor over here and we have our ceiling over here. If price is kind of like a ball, this is the path that this bouncy ball is following. So you can see that price comes up here, bounces off, comes down here, bounces off, up here, bounces again, bounces here, and over here, bounces off again. So these are levels that price is respecting, because every time price is coming here, it's going in the other direction. So clearly, even though on your chart, before you draw these lines in, there's nothing there, there is a certain level of price that's being respected by whether it's the sellers up here or by the buyers down here. Essentially, what's happening behind the scenes, every time price is reaching this level, so our resistance, there's a lot of people selling. That's literally what's happening. So every time price comes up here, there's some sell orders people have put in, and there's just people that are probably market selling now as well, which is pushing the price further down, pushes price all the way down to our support. Now the support is the opposite. We have buyers. So over here people are buying, over here people are buying to push price back up, and even over here they're buying. So with our support and resistance levels, these levels can be used to identify future levels. So in simple terms, we have a price over here, right? So if the price in the future was to, let's say it goes up, breaks our resistance, goes all the way somewhere over here. I know we don't have candles, but let's just imagine we do. The candles come back down, because then price is able to come back to this resistance over here. So this red line, let's imagine it extended all the way over here. I still respect it. So this is what I'm trying to say when these levels can be used in the future. Once a resistance or support has been established, essentially it can be used in the future. Price is able to come back to it again and respect it once again. So now moving on to trend lines. So trend lines can act as a diagonal support or resistance for price. Price will usually respect these trend lines and bounce off them, but it can also flip them to utilize as a support instead of resistance, or the other way around. So over here on our little example, we've got two trend lines. So the first thing I mentioned, trend lines can act as a diagonal support or as a resistance for price. So in this trend line, the trend line is acting as a support for the price. Clearly, price is coming here, touching the trend line, bouncing off, touching, bouncing off, again here, touching, and then bouncing off. As we saw with our horizontal supports as well, price will touch it, then bounce off. Over here, we've got this trend line. So this trend line is acting as a resistance. Every time price is touching it, we're bouncing off, touching it again, bouncing off, touching it here, and it's causing price to push down further. So the simplest way to actually look at them is just the form of support and resistance, because that is what they are. Price will respect these lines as well as the horizontal supports and resistances. They can be used in confluence, and you just want to be able to see these big trend lines, especially from higher time frames, because they're going to have a lot of importance and price will respect them a lot of the time. So the next thing I want to talk about with all of these things are supports, resistances, and trend lines. How can we use them? So just as I was saying right now, the most important thing here is identifying key levels. So imagine now you're opening a weekly chart and you've identified You've identified a very strong resistance level at the top of the chart, right? So now you might be zooming into your 15-minute chart, and your 15-minute chart's in an uptrend, and now you're thinking, price is going to break, price isn't going to stop, it's just going to keep climbing. But if you've identified that there's a weekly resistance, it's definitely going to be a strong level. So price will most likely bounce from there or take some time to consolidate and see sideways movement before you break through. When it's a weekly level, you can't really expect you can't expect price to just push through as if nothing's actually there, right? The next thing you can use all these levels for is identifying patterns. So if you go into my Instagram and you take a look at some of the stuff I post, I do post these little patterns. I show things like ascending triangles, descending triangles, bottom formations, and I'm going to be posting a lot more on there, so you guys can just go there, save them, refer back to them, right? But anyways, with these patterns, with your supports and resistances and then your trend lines, when you use them together, they're going to help you identify patterns. So for example, one of the patterns I just mentioned is ascending triangle. Ascending triangle is made up of one horizontal resistance and one diagonal trend line that acts as a support, right? So if you're able to combine all these things, you're able to identify patterns. And then if you know what these patterns mean, you can make a prediction of where price is going next. I was going to say you can tell where price is going next, but of course you need confluence, which is the next point. You can't always know. Price can be unpredictable and nothing's a given, but all these things together will give you a higher probability of knowing where price might end up. So the next thing is our confluence with strategies. So of course, in crypto and even forex, there's literally a million strategies, but a lot of them will use some form of support and resistance. For example, I will go more in depth into this stuff, but one of the things that I use is the Ichimoku strategy. And the Ichimoku strategy, which I'll show you guys in a minute, it essentially has clouds, and in these clouds, you have the top of the cloud, the bottom. A lot of the time, you'll see price respect these levels as if they are support and resistance, because that is essentially what we call it, the Kumo cloud acts as. So that's just one strategy. A lot of other strategies like Bollinger Bands and several other ones, they're going to have supports and resistances, but your actual supports and resistances, for example, as I mentioned, your weekly levels, because they're very important levels, and for some charts, such as Bitcoin, even your monthly levels, they're going to be very important. So being able to identify these, draw them on, kind of gives you an edge in your trading, and it's probably one of the most basic things. And I think I myself included, some traders may stop drawing on the basic supports and resistances, but sometimes just having them on a chart, even if it's in a different color, um, just in front of you, makes it a lot easier to visualize what's happening with price, where price is ranging, where it might drop to next, and so forth. So that's all in terms of price action, right? How you can use them. So in terms of actual execution and making money, we have our buy low and sell high principle, right? Of course, that's probably one of the most basic things that you hear about. You want to buy an asset when it's low, at a low price, and selling at a high price to make a profit. Same with if you do leverage trading, you'd be shorting assets when they're high, and then of course taking your profit as the price drops lower. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is DCA purposes. So of course DCA, which some of you beginners may not know what it is dollar cost averaging. So in very, very simple terms, I will make another video to touch on this, and I have a PDF guide that I'm working on right now. I'm going to refine and release to the public. But what DCA essentially is investing proportionate amounts at different price levels. So let's imagine there's a coin, right? And this coin is currently $10. So now, when this coin drops to $5, you might invest a specific amount, and then when it drops to $2, you might invest that same amount again. And everyone's strategy for DCA is different, but essentially DCA is just spreading your investment so you can get a better average price, and knowing where all your supports and resistances sit or your trend lines, it makes it a lot easier to know when to invest rather than just blindly opening your KuCoin or Binance and going to market buy at any price, because if price is currently at $6, but you know that it's not sitting next to a support or resistance right now, and the next support sits at around $4, then you know you can set a buy order at $4 instead to get a better price. Okay, so of course, supports, resistances, trend lines, they're very, very basic things. When you open up a chart, you're going to see them everywhere. The more you start drawing them on, the quicker your eyes are going to be able to pick up each new level, and you might feel the urge to essentially draw it on, but you don't want to do this because, like I said before, the weekly levels are a lot more significant in terms of how price will react to them, right? So what's very important is, let's go on your weekly chart, let's draw everything on, then let's go to your daily chart, draw everything on. But if you came down to 5 minute chart, you wouldn't start drawing on every support and resistance, every trend line, unless you are somebody who scalps. But again, that's more advanced talk for the future. This is just focused at beginners at the moment. So of course, supports and resistance, you wouldn't draw on every single level on your 5 minute chart, because if you started doing that, then you zoom out, all you're going to see is just straight lines on your chart. So the second point, high probability setups, exact same point again. It just feels like I'm saying the same thing here again, but with your higher time frames, your weekly, your daily, even maybe you use 12 hour, 8 hour, or 4 hour, those time frames, that's where you want to point out all your key support and resistance levels, all your key trend lines, because that's where price is more likely to respect those levels, rather than if you draw in a 5 minute support and try to buy from there, you might just easily get wicked out, because if the price on a 4 hour range has just rejected from the resistance and now it's dropping down to a support, essentially you do want to be selling, you want to be following the general trend on the higher time frames. So just to finish off the video here, I'm gonna show you guys exactly how I mark up my charts on TradingView. The way I'm gonna show you is not, well, it's not exactly how I do it now, but it is how I used to do it before and as a beginner, and it's something that's very systematic, quite organized. So this might be a strategy that some of you can use, or even if you can't use it, it might be something you can take away from it. So okay, so we're going to be marking up the Ethereum USD chart over here. So, well, first of all, I'd like to start by showing you guys the Ichimoku strategy, because I mentioned before that some strategies do use some forms of support and resistance sometimes. So if I turn on my Ichimoku here, so in the Ichimoku strategy, this red and this like green area, they're called Kumo clouds. So you can see inside this red Kumo cloud, price rejected here, here, over here, price tried to use this cloud as a support, but it failed. We came down, we managed to use this as a support, but of course failed again and fell under. And so yeah, some strategies do use, or they have some form of support and resistance within them, as you can see with the Kumo clouds. But anyways, back to the actual strategy that I'd like to share with you guys. With strategies, of course, everyone's strategy and trading style will be different. Somebody might see this and not like it, but somebody might take something away from this. But this is what I just used to do, and it always worked for me. So yeah, this is the weekly chart. I always start on the weekly chart. First thing I'll do, easiest thing, if we go to your horizontal lines, marking in this level, right? Don't know why that's green. Let's make it black. Okay, so that is essentially our support and resistance level. As you can see here, we've managed to use this level as a resistance. We've then flipped it, we've used it as a support here quite a few times. And the same way, I'm going to be adding a few more levels in here now. Say around, yeah, around there. There's another one just here. And I always like to add the highest closing candle, which is about there, and the actual all-time high. You don't have to, but it's just good to have there sometimes. So the next level, or the next thing that I like to add, is a trend line usually. Guess you can kind of see a trend line forming here. Usually I don't like to put my trend lines and levels on forming candles. As you can see, this last candle here is currently forming. So if I put my, imagine I put my trend line, let's say here, right? There's no way to actually tell if this candle is currently respecting this alleged trend, because that's not meant to happen. Because this candle could close below the line, could close all the way up here. So it is hard to tell where the actual trend lies, but just for the sake of the video, I'm going to put this line in, and let's imagine that this is a trend right now. An important thing with all of this stuff, you do want to go for the clear examples. So I think here, it's another one I can spot about here. Yeah. So there we can see price respects here, price does respect here, price respects twice here. So when I was talking about high probability setups earlier on, this is what I mean. You do want to go for the clear examples. You don't really want to try and force a level, essentially. You don't want to just add in things for the sake of it. The more high probability stuff, the more simpler stuff you have in front of you, the more likely you are to make that successful trade. So from here, that was a weekly chart. I'd zoom into my daily. So of course you do need some sort of like foundational knowledge, because usually I go into my daily charts, I look for patterns, I look for fresh other levels that I haven't already identified on the weekly that could have some sort of importance. So let's say this level here, I'd probably mark this in. Let's go ahead and mark that in. About there. And now, because this is a daily chart, usually I change the color, so let's go for blue. So now that level is marked in, just know that level is there. It's a daily level, and then all the black lines are weekly levels. Okay, here. Okay, this looks interesting. This formation. Let's zoom in one more time. Okay, so here, if this is clearly a weekly resistance, right? And as I said, I look for patterns, I try to identify them. So at the moment, there's no clear trade that I would take from this chart, but possibly here, because this is a weekly resistance and a weekly trend that we're respecting, price might be forming an ascending triangle over here. An ascending triangle is usually a bullish continuation pattern, meaning price would come up somewhere in here, keep getting squeezed. If this really is an ascending triangle, break upwards. I'd like to see price break up, use this level as a support level, and if it confirms that this is now a support instead of a resistance, I'd probably long Ethereum from here, target around here or here. It's quite a simple one really, but like I said, you do need to be aware of the patterns and have like a decent knowledge. So if you're trying to learn about them, go to my Instagram. I'm posting a lot on there. I'm going to be posting a lot more as well. So you guys can just save the kind of pictures and posters that I'm making for these patterns, so it's easy to understand. In terms of the strategy, that really is about it for now. Just try to keep it basic. As I explained before, the most simple thing is buying at support and selling at resistance. So in terms of this actual strategy, it's not so much a trading strategy, but it's more so a marking your chart strategy, just to make things more visible and clearer to yourself, to kind of understand what price is doing and where it may go next. I'd like to finish by saying this is my Instagram and this is my Twitter. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, you can message me on either. I'd urge you to follow my Instagram. I'm posting a lot of content on there, some very basic stuff, and I'm going to be posting more complex stuff on there. There's just going to be a lot of different stuff posted on there that might not come in to my YouTube videos and would be just good to see and use. Another good thing is on Instagram, you can just screenshot some of the information and just save it. And like I said, If you guys have any questions, just message me and I'll see you in the next episode.